And we're back to talk about assignment 2. This is part 2 of the major project. So I want you all to be aware that what I'm trying to do with this major project is I'm trying to make it painless for you. This is something that we are expected to do as part of the course, and our course coordinator has spent a lot of time making a really nice project, but the issue and challenge that we have is that the course is supposed to be a 15-week course, and in many cases it's already condensed to 13 weeks, but our version is condensed into 10 weeks. So I'm trying to consider those factors when we look at the assignment components. So let's take a look at what we're doing in part 2. Now you should have already done part 1 at this point, where you submitted a document stating what your topic was going to be and essentially what you were looking to write your project about. So the idea is that this whole Java project should be something that is inspirational to you, it speaks to you, it's something that's interesting to you. Some kind of Java project that you might actually be able to use would be kind of cool. So what we're doing in part 2 is we're starting to demonstrate writing some code. So what you are to do in assignment 2, and what I've done is I've taken the original document by the course coordinator and I've done strike through for all the things that I'm not going to ask that you do. What he does ask for is some more documentation. So you would have gotten feedback from me, and this would be your revised section, which is really ideal. I think that's great. He also talks about this stuff called UML diagramming. I will show you what that is. I'm not going to ask you to do UML diagramming. It's good stuff, very valuable. Given that we're in 10 weeks, I'd rather see you doing coding. Ideally, though, UML is really probably the proper way to do something like this, but it's just something I think we may have to cut because of lack of time. So what I am looking for you to give me is 2 Java files. So you're going to be creating a class of your object that has a constructor. You should already know what that is. You should have a mutator method. A mutator method is something that's going to set a value. It's a setter. And then an accessor method for each variable, which, as you know, an accessor variable is you're going to get. So we're going to have setters and getters for each variable of our object, after we, of course, build the object or construct it. And then we're going to have a driver file, a file that has a main method that's going to create at least one object from this class file. So this is very similar to what you did a few weeks ago, like as example with patient hospital. You had a patient class that did not contain main, and then in the hospital you created patients. So it's very similar to that. So what you want to do is you want to read in lines of values, at least 4 lines of input using scanner, or you can use JOptionPane. So you want the user to set the values for these objects. So we may have done hard coding of those instances, but here I'm asking you to have the user give you those values. Somewhere in your code, your program should at least one nested if-else structure. So you're going to have to figure out a way to do that depending on what you're trying to do. So say you're thinking like, say for example you have a client. Say you're creating an insurance company that keeps track of inventory on clients. So when you add a client, you're creating an instance of a client. So let's say that you have a client and you want to say that if the client is older than 25, that's probably too young. If the client is older than 40, then you want to make sure that you offer them life insurance. Inside that group where you offer life insurance, if they're older than 55, then you would also, that would be a nested if, because if they're older than 45, then they might also be older than 55. But if they're not older than 45, which would be your else, then you're not going to need to be concerned about like some kind of long-term care insurance, because they're going to be younger than that. They're not thinking like that. So you could have an if, and if it might say if they're older than 45, offer them life insurance, and inside that if, check and see if they are also older than 55 or older than 65, and you want to make sure you offer them long-term care insurance, which is basically the insurance for when you're in a nursing home had long-term care insurance for my mom, it actually helped a lot. But let me tell you, it doesn't take long to spend long-term care insurance because it doesn't last forever. Anyway, so just come up with some way to create a nested if-else structure. That is really all I'm looking for you to give me. But you're going to have two files. One file for your class, your blueprint, and then another file that has main, where you create an instance of that object. And you should assign those values for your object using Scanner. So you're going to have two files that you're going to zip together into one folder called Assignment 2, your last name, first name. That's going to be a zipped folder. And you're going to upload the zipped folder to Blackboard. That's all I'm looking for. Now let me take a brief moment and show you what UML is, because UML diagramming is good stuff and it's very helpful in programming. So just to try to give you an example of where we might use UML. This is not the best example. Let me see if I can find UML. Maybe this. Well, this is okay. It's not the best thing. But this is an example. UML is basically, it's diagrams is what it is. So here we're trying to say that we would have a blueprint would create an automobile. And this is not really the best example. Let me find a better example. I'm so sorry about this. Should have spent a moment ahead of time looking for an object with UML. But I wanted to see those. Okay, this is a little better. It's not great, but a little better. So here the idea is that if I have an order, I want to create an order. So when a customer comes into my restaurant or flower shop or whatever, I'm going to create an order. This is my blueprint for order. What am I going to take for an order? The only thing I'm concerned about is the date of the order and the number, like order number 16. That's what this does. This is a class that creates an order, and the attributes for the order is the date and the number. So date is a it's a date variable. We haven't really looked at date variables. You can do them in Java. And then number, oddly enough, would be a string. So the reason why it's a string is because it might be like order number A65, and A, of course, is not a number, it's a string. So what are the behaviors, what are the things that we can do with the order? We can confirm the order or we can close it. We can make sure we got it. So is your order correct? You wanted the bouquet of flowers, the fall festive flower bouquet, and the 12 long-stemmed red roses. Yeah, it's confirmation of the order. And then you close the order. Okay, thank you very much. You've taken the money, they're done, you close the order. So this is a blueprint when we create an order. And every time we create an order, we would have an instance of this thing. So UML is just basically a way to diagram the parts of an object. Now in this screenshot here, this is an object, that's an object, that's an object, it's an object. So they have several objects, so you wouldn't have to do that. But there are ways to make UML. You can do it in Word, but you can also use a program called OpenOffice, and I think that is something that our course coordinator talks about with UML. You can use a project called a software, called OpenOffice that easily allows you to create UML diagrams. So I just want you to know what they are. I'm not going to ask that you do them right now. We may not have time to do them, but you do need to know what they are. All right. So questions on this? Just please email me. This is a big project. It's this whole big project is 5 parts. This is part 2. This is 20 points. So part 1 was 20 points. This is 20 points. So make sure you turn this in, and you have a lot of stuff to do this week, so make sure you're working on this as well.